Hi, everyone, and welcome to Resource Revolution, the resource management podcast. I'm your host, Christine Robinson. On this podcast, we will discuss the real-life experiences of people in and around the world of resource management. Today, we have Matt Cockett joining us. Matt is Dayshape's CEO, having joined us earlier this year with significant experience in driving growth in global B2B SaaS businesses. Matt has spent his career in the tech industry from mobile to various HR technologies and has worked within large corporates, startups, and in fast-paced, PE-backed SaaS businesses in turnaround and growth environments. Matt, it is so great to have you here with us today. Let's dive right in.
Hi, Christine. It's great to be here.
We'll get to it. The resource management world is an interesting one. And certainly there's a lot of, I'd say, noise right now, a lot of buzz, mostly positive, which is great. But there's this idea around why resource management matters, right? There's why are we talking about this? What's going on with resource management? There's a lot around how to elevate resource management. So I really wanted to start with that concept. Why are we even talking about that right now, right? There's a lot going on. Things are changing. There's companies that really have people at their core, and why does that matter for them?
I think just having that conversation about elevating resource management, I kind of come back to the view, which is, why wouldn't you? But anyway, let's take a step back and think about it. I think it's the easiest thing to do, or the best place to start, is think about the market. I mean, the market's moving really interestingly in the direction of resource management. You've got big accountancy firms being acquired or invested in by private equity, which shakes things up. You've got a lot of competition for bigger professional services firms and smaller firms alike. There's a lot of people on the move always, in professional services in particular, where RM is a really important function. There is a great deal of focus on, how to make those people more efficient, and those people are on the move. So naturally, resource management becomes even more important. And in an industry when things are going well, it's important. In an industry where things are going difficultly, or if it's a tough market, then it's important as well. So I think it's a bit of a no-brainer. I think that resource management's important. I think what's useful to discuss is why it's not sometimes seen more important within an organization itself.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I think as someone who has spent her career in this space, I find it very interesting. Not so much the idea that resource managers are having to sort of sell RM internally, because that's always existed probably within any industry. But what I find really interesting, and I'd love to get your opinion on this, is this idea that, as you say, the market is changing, right? So we're seeing this PE activity in the accountancy space in particular. And I think that there is this view, this is something that I've heard around, well, now with all of this change, there will be less appetite for investing in things like resource management because it's seen as kind of a nice to have. I could not disagree more, and I'm curious your perspective on that. What do you say to people who say that?
You surprised me, Christine. Well, I think we very much see the opposite to that. I think we very much come at it from a technology lens initially. RM to be successful with resource management very much involves the technology and the people and the process, etc. So, but we see the opposite. We see a great deal of focus on the technology stack within growing or larger professional services organization, because people don't want any wasted calories or investment. They want to know exactly what they have in terms of resource to play with, and have a much clearer forward-facing view. So as we were talking about in the market, if you don't have that ability to look forward and you're just reporting on actual, then you really you're setting yourself up for failure. So we see the opposite, really, and I'm continually surprised sometimes where you see that dynamic where resource management is a side of desk function still, or is an offline manual function, even when there's huge investment going on in technologies elsewhere. So yeah, it's about breaking through that, I think. And I even though you're saying that RM still have always had to sort of sell sell themselves, I don't think that's going to stop, right? It's sort of the same in a lot of functions that you have to make sure you're proving your worth continually. Having said that, I massively believe that resource management has the greatest chance to stand out and will become a function of the future, real, and it's happening now.
Function of the future. I'm going to write that down. I like that a lot. So let's dig into that. How does one become part of the function of the future, right? Because there's the piece around actually adding value. Absolutely. They certainly need to be doing that. But then there's the part around positioning themselves internally and really building the brand, so to speak, of resource management within their organization. So as we think about that, I've heard you talk about this idea of trust. Can you share some more about that? What does that mean in this context?
Yeah, I mean, I think for a little while, I spent time and I have worked in HR, tech, and in large software companies that are deploying that sort of software to major organizations. And there's always been this phrase, which is, we'd like HR to have a seat at the table. And I think that's sort of fascinating. I think I've asked myself what that really means. And really what it comes down to is who has the best information, the most reliable information, and is trusted with that information. And quite often HR teams would bring insight, but it's the finance function that people default back to. Now, RM teams have that ability to, yes, deliver that kind of view of the world, what's the state of play, but always also have that ability to show the future looking view, as I was saying. So I think the way to do it now is to better shine a light on the organization, literally surface the insight on opportunity or problem or risk. And similarly, differentiate yourself through certainty. I think that's the key thing here, that quite often insight, data, management information is not so certain, is not so trustworthy. So it's about proving a track record and really differentiating the RM function as being the place to go. Now, not particularly easy to do, but you have to start on that journey and really trying to close that gap between what you say is going to happen and what actually happens. And if you can get that to be a really small variance, then that's where the trust comes from.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And part of where I have seen the process fall down, quite frankly, right? Because you might have the best of intentions and might truly have crafted a process that conceptually sounds great. But in practice, if you don't have that data, right? If you don't have all of that, the metrics and everything that you need to back it up, that trust erodes, and it's sort of this very negative self-fulfilling prophecy. And what I would say is this idea of certainty as a differentiator is really interesting to me. In particular, is timely because I attended an AICPA conference a couple of months back where this idea of absolute confidence came up. There's certainly the concept of reasonable confidence that is really interplayed throughout the accountancy industry because that's how they perform their technical audits. But the idea of AI being a game changer by being able to provide absolute confidence, either because of the speed at which it can operate or whatever the technology is being leveraged for. How do you see that when you think about a tool like Dayshape in the resource management space? Does that apply?
It definitely does. It's coming at it from another angle, but we see this kind of thing all the time. It's interesting to me how well the impact of technology is quite often negatively impacted by how well it's implemented and adopted, and you know that, and you've seen that. But with AI specifically, where we add a lot of value is in the speed and accuracy of the matching of resources to the opportunity or the particular engagement. And that in itself is a baseline thing that we deliver. There's other ways that AI layers on more capability around that. But I'm, again, continually amazed by how that part of the process, if done manually, is insanely inefficient. You have, for example, a choice to make all the time. I'd like, for example, Christine to work on project A, and by the time I've got around to finding out if Christine can work on project A, Christine's working on project B. And I had a prospect meeting the other day where that customer is having that problem 80% of the time. And so you've got this kind of continual echo chamber of trying to find and match. And I think that's where, providing that surety of availability and match, even if it's like the best possible fit, is really, really important. It's really where we can add a ton of value. Obviously, there's lots of other angles around AI that would help and do help interrogate that information or your existing data, and work with speed. But I like your angle there. I think doing things rapidly and using the software to help you do that increases surety and make sure that you're doing absolutely everything you can to be as efficient as possible.
It brings up sort of an interesting, I'll call it sort of a catch-22 for resource managers who, on the one hand, certainly want to elevate and advance in their career and continue to brand resource management internally as having a seat at the table, and at the same time might be struggling to gain the executive buy-in to do something like get investment dollars for a tool. So it's sort of this sticky situation, right? Where individuals might find themselves in that spot. Any thoughts on there? Because I think part of it is, look, you're a resource management leader. You're taking your wins where you can get them, and you might be thinking, well, how do I really position this ask around, hey, they're going to view this as another operational tool. But you just touched on something that is so much more than that. How can they kind of bring that to life if they're looking to supplement with technologies in general?
Yeah, I mean, we spend obviously our lives doing this, so I could definitely keep talking about this, but I feel that there's a couple of really powerful tactics that are worth thinking about if you're looking to build a picture as to why resource management is a must-have function, or an investment area. I think it was mentioned in one of your previous podcasts, Christine, this concept of applying or highlighting revenue at risk. I think it's super powerful. Rather than talking about an investment, it's highlighting, if we're not doing this, what are we leaving on the table? How are we being left behind by not doing this? How are we not serving our customers or our people? But similarly, what sort of revenue or optimization are we leaving on the table by not doing that? And if you can quantify that and work with colleagues to do it, I think that's really, really powerful. I think to add to that, I would say do the research, go around the organization and listen. It's a real parallel to how we sell Dayshape and find buy-in, because no one's going to buy software or invest unless you've got all your stakeholders aligned. And quite often for us, that could be the CFO, the CEO, the CIO. So we have to be able to discuss this as supportive business colleagues with all of that kind of all of the organization. So in doing that, I think there's a really important technique, which is to go in and listen and ultimately try and find the pain points that are happening within that organization, which is a classic sales tool in a way. It's going in and pain funneling and asking questions and saying, how hard is that and why is that hard? So I'd start there. I think anyone that's got an opening for resource management, even if someone said, can you have a look at this as an extra part of your role? I'd start to do that detective work and go in and find where the pain points are, and then I'd quantify it. That gives you a really solid place to start.
It's a very helpful framework because it's very practical. That's something that any resource manager, I don't care what level they are, can apply within their own, let's say, book of business, right? Whether they're supporting 100 people or 7,000 people, they can start thinking about that and having those conversations. So to kind of wrap up the idea of all of this, I'm thinking now in the heads of our listeners who find themselves at all different points within the resource management career spectrum and within the resource management maturity. I would say, generally speaking, resource managers are optimistic people. They come in and they want to build something. They know that it is challenging, but they find that rewarding. But at the same time, there can be this this question mark around, is this all worth it? Will this work, right? Like, will I get a seat at the table? So curious, Matt, from your perspective, have you seen this happen, not in resource management, but in other ways? Have you seen other functions take off this way? Will our dreams come true is what I'm asking.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think there's a really natural parallel, Christine, with what happened with sales operations as a function, and the charted growth of organizations in that area and teams in that area is really, really easy to see now. But if you rewind 10 years, sales operations was a sort of a function in the corner. It might be one or two people. They were asking commercial customer-facing teams to do things they didn't want to do, fill out data, fill out CRM, and you fast forward to now, and those are big, important, central functions within any scaled organization. I mean, my lens is software companies. It's critical in software companies, but also in professional services. And you have C-suite roles, you have chief revenue officer roles that are sitting at that table and talking about that future-facing insight of where we're going as a business, and are we capturing the opportunity correctly across every level of the smallest lead all the way through to a recurring contract. And that's a very, very impactful function and role. And my view, and it's not just my view, is that resource management will emerge as a function at that scale and impact. It already is. I'm just recently been talking to a COO of a Big Four firm who was talking to me about just that, and putting in a resource leader that sounded like the most impactful role. I think they will do this, that they will hire this year. Very, very senior, global, and looking to think differently about that recruitment and that role, which I thought was like really, really impressive and very insightful and exciting for us, any of us that are involved in resource management.
It is exciting, and I think part of that is personal, because it actually speaks to the career path of individuals that are in this space. There's this part around making that, carving that path out for yourself and for your organization. But part of that, and this has been a challenge, I would say, in this industry, has been not necessarily having access or insight into what's happening broadly. So what I mean by that is, a lot of times you do have resource managers or resource management leaders that feel that they're kind of this lone wolf, right? They have certainly a lot of impact and influence from within their organization. They don't necessarily know what's happening outside of their organization, right? There aren't multiple resource management publications. And now, a word about our sponsors, Dayshape. Do you ever feel like your team spends more time managing spreadsheets than getting actual work done? If you're a strategic leader in a professional services firm, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Say goodbye to the chaos with Dayshape. Dayshape is an AI-powered platform that takes the stress out of resource management. Imagine scheduling, planning, and staffing all being handled in one smart system that actually understands your business. Sounds too good to be true? Believe me, I dreamt of having this type of technology when I was a resource management leader. It's like having a superpower for your firm, boosting productivity, profitability, and even employee happiness. Plus, it seamlessly integrates with your existing tools, so there's zero disruption. Do you want to see the magic in action? Check out dayshape.com and see how your resource management function can be elevated to a more strategic position. Trust me, your team and your CEO will thank you. And I think, Matt, it would be really interesting for you to share from what you're seeing, because you are seeing a number of different things with the conversations that you're having and the firms that you're engaging with. Tell us what's going on, and in terms of what's happening with investment in resource management. What's the landscape? How are leading firms actually making strategic investments in resource management? Are firms making strategic investments in resource management? What's going on out there?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely a key area of focus for a number of large-scaled organizations. Our lens at the moment is very much in the broader professional services market and world, and I think the things we talked about at the beginning of the conversation that's converging in that sector is driving absolutely driving strategic investment. Private equity is a big deal, certainly in professional services and accounting firms right now, as you know, as you well know, and that drives a special kind of focus. We're no strangers to private equity investment in the tech world, and what that does is it provides a level of clarity and ambition for growth, a lens on how you're investing and in what. Software becomes and tech becomes really important. And I think it really does shine a light and surfaces what you know about your own company. The first thing professional investors do is say, tell me where we're at, tell me where we're going. And if you fumble that pass, then you as a leadership team kind of lose the right to have autonomy in running your organization. And I think so that's why we're seeing quite a nice shift towards professional services organization. Maybe in the past have been partner led, that need to know where their business is at. They need to know what's happened in the past, but what's going on in the future, and what's our book of business look like and our resource pool within that. So yeah, it's an amazing time from that perspective to kind of stand out and be a voice, I think, in the organization. If you're in an RM team within a firm that's going through some change, I think it's tremendously exciting. And I absolutely do see that every day, every week rather, where resource management teams are being brought in to C-suite conversations because of what's going on in a broader sense.
You touched upon something that is one exciting, but also very much parallels this broader conversation around, let's call it resource management maturity, the evolution of resource management, because certainly while that is very exciting, we also know that not every organization is doing that. Some may not have that level of impact, I would say, within their resource management function. Others don't have a resource management function, right? And they're now realizing that they want to start building that, and they're starting to play with what that could mean. In terms of what you've seen, any comment around how that idea of resource management maturity manifests itself within different industries? Are there certain industries, let's say, that are leading that? Does it not really matter the industry? Is there another factor? What are you seeing there?
I think certainly in professional services firms, where you've got a vast majority of employees are billable roles, then there's a natural focus on it. Having said that, if you broaden that out into other firms, types of firms, engineering, media agency, IT services organization, where you have internal and external contracting, you have some really interesting applications for resource management. I think we're super busy in our heartland right now, but we've got a lot of interest beyond it. I think the other angle that's really interesting to your question is if you're in an organization that's growing successfully and you're in RM, if it's not broken, why fix it? Can be a bit of a dynamic. I had a partner of a large US accountancy firm say to me that he used to do this whole thing on printed spreadsheets with highlighter pens and never lost a single dollar. And I saw that as a bit of a challenge, and we're rolling out Dayshape, and we're doing amazing things with them. And I think that's the other lens to think about, which is if your firm's growing well and profitably, how much more could it be growing profitably and successfully with this kind of lens on it? And I think that's important for people to grasp as well, that it's not just in the tough times we should be investing in this kind of software, because it sets a new kind of growth parameter for you as an organization.
Could not agree more. And for our listeners who are thinking, yes, this makes perfect sense, but how do I have a conversation around that? I can give you an example. So this was years ago, not to date myself, but I was engaging with a partner who, Matt, to your point, was very really liked his way of doing things, let's just call it. And it was a spreadsheet. And as you can imagine, it was not, it didn't even have any sort of formulas either. It was literally just a spreadsheet that kind of listed out a couple things. And the reality was that it was working for what he was trying to do at that time. Couldn't argue with that. It was doing what he wanted in terms of what he was able to track. However, part of being successful as a resource management leader is not understanding how to keep doing the same thing over and over and over, but actually understanding, well, what does this organization want to achieve? Where are they going? Right? So understand and speak their language around, are they trying to grow their footprint? Are they trying to, expand into different market offerings, right? So there has to be some sort of growth strategy for the organization or the practice that you're supporting. And how can you link resource management to that? And so I said to him, look, quite frankly, you're right. This is working for what you've been doing. But for what you're trying to do, this is what you actually need to be doing. And I can help you with that, right? So I think it's that conversation. And Matt, to go back to your point earlier, it's this idea of speaking their language, revenue at risk, the revenue impact. Do you see that? Curious your opinion. Do you find that, and there's probably many ways, but the idea of linking the resource management function to the idea of profitability and growth, do you think that's maybe the best bet at this point for resource managers to lean into that part of the conversation?
But I certainly think there's an angle. Well, it's a super important angle, right? So if you're going to start anywhere, then start there. Having said that, I think there are lots of important dynamics around an organization that obviously relate to the people, retention, fulfillment, engagement, and how does resource management help with that? Lack of burnout, just general visibility of what you've got to play with. And I think, again, just in terms, I keep thinking back to how do you get conversations going is kind of what you're angling towards. It's important to ask questions, how impactful would it be to you if you could look 2 years into the future and see what my revenue is going to be based on the resources I have today? And if the answer is yes, then great. And then the second question being, can you do that today? No. So it's sort of painting a picture of the art of the possible, I think would be a really great way. And I often think as well, and I see this in my role on a day-to-day basis, which is people are amazingly open to giving you time and having a coffee. And if you're in a massive organization and you're in the RM team and you have an idea, and we sit with RMs all the time. We had a London meetup with a whole bunch of RMs just the other night over a glass of wine, and the ideas that come out are just amazing. Like, what if I could do this? I'd love it if I could do that. And that's a great way, I think, of breaking into internal conversation, which is reaching out to your leadership and saying, could I have half an hour of your time? I have an idea about this, or I have seen that. And often people are concerned about jumping levels and things, but you'd be amazed how open, I think, leaders are to sitting with people and exploring new ideas.
And you talked about this, right? There's a number of different industries that are just now at the tip of the iceberg of exploring what that could look like. And so thinking about that and talking about really the future of resource management, would love to pick your brain on that. How are you seeing the evolution of the role of the resource manager? And I put this into context from the perspective that, you have made a career decision, right, to do this as well, right? You obviously saw something down this path and you thought, hey, this is something I want to be a part of. So tell me your thoughts on that.
You even just talking today, I've been really involved in sales operations as part of my roles over the last few years, and I was asking myself, well, why was that an interesting part of my remit? And it's because those teams touch all aspects of the company. Like, you are very centrally focused. You're looking at really tactical things like what's happening today, and it's super busy. But secondly, you've got to sit back and say, well, have we got enough future-facing business? What's our customer health? What's on our opportunity slate for the coming quarters or years? You can flip between being super tactical as to what's really the problem that's hitting us right in the face, all the way, or opportunity, right through to how are we planning our business for the future. So I personally think that's probably been in the back of my mind as I've stepped into leading Dayshape and being in the world of resource management. I also love companies and functions and roles that just make a really tangible impact. There's a lot of what we do that's really referenceable, super easy to illustrate the impact of. And I love that, and it has a very clear link back to helping create growing, healthy, productive organizations, which, if you bear with me, links back to people's careers, and that in itself is super satisfying, because if you can link what you're doing on a daily basis when you get out of bed on a Monday morning to actually helping people grow sustainable long-term careers, I think that's really interesting, and energizing on a personal level. So yeah, I hope that addresses your question somewhat.
It does, but it leads me to another question, right? Because there's this idea of what the broader impact is, and then I think about it in kind of two different ways, right? So the one is, as an organization, what should firms be doing to stay ahead of the curve? Is there something that they should be thinking about more short term versus long term? What are you seeing? I mean, you engage with so many different organizations, right, in different industries. What advice would you have at an organizational level?
Yeah, I mean, I'd certainly start by looking at RM as a core function. It's slightly it's not uncommon for us to hear about resource managers being also billable resources, and you kind of think, wow, what a day they must have, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think looking at the function and investing in the function, and understanding and learning what that could be. I think getting out there into the community of resource management and listening podcasts like this. But we ran an event last year. We had 100 RMs in London together, RM leaders, and it's amazing how much people are keen to share. And it's because people like to hear about how to optimize in this space. Like we're kind of optimization junkies. How could I do this better? And if you're passionate about that, you don't mind sharing it, even if they're from another organization. So it's kind of rising the tide. So I'd be getting out into the industry, and then I would, talk to. It's going to sound blatant, but talk to a few vendors. If they're a good vendor, they'll help you build a business case, and that's what really speaks volumes. It's understanding the art of the possible with some dedicated support. We work across businesses, across industries, so we do give some great insight once we've build relationships with the companies that we work with or want to work with. So yeah, I think those three things would probably be where I'd start.
Makes a lot of sense. I don't know that I can have this conversation with you without asking about AI. There is just so much going on, and we hear so much. People that are not experts, right, in this space are hearing so much, and you're just kind of getting inundated. Tell us about AI as it relates to the future of resource management, because we've heard a lot. We know it exists, but to the resource manager out there, what's going on? What does this mean for us?
I would say that AI is about having the wind behind you and helping you do what you already know that you want to achieve and have a vision for as your organization. So set your vision and set your plan and think about how AI can help you with that. I think that's a kind of a critical way. It's not going to be a silver bullet that's going to come in and say, right, we can do this and we can suddenly do it with absolutely zero investment. Right? It's going to be a bit of a journey. And I think when I talk to large or scale global organizations that are still working on Excel for this kind of thing, which is still a thing, it says to me that let's get the basics right and the foundations right, and then layer in AI. And then I think it's about what kinds of AI really kind of help you move the needle. It's a broad church. In Dayshape, we've spent a lot of time over the years using AI for matching and solving for the core problem, which is still really a big pain issue for scaled organizations, which is how can I find the right person for the right job, and how can I do it quickly? And all the other things that go around that individual, their skills, their desire, their location, all that it's hard to do that without AI if you want to do it really, really well. So again, that's what makes me feel passionate about the way we've applied it. But there's many more applications to it that it could seem gimmicky. We've all in HR wanted to be able to deliver your kind of HR assistant of the future. and have experienced how that's really not not been a great thing. But we have some really interesting things in development at Dayshape, just around how can you use it to speed up what you're already doing? How can you interrogate your data? How can you ask if I have a problem in the future or an opportunity? How can I use AI to say, I have a consultant that's available, find me an engagement? This kind of natural language use of AI in the context of resource management, we think is really, really exciting. So it's about getting researched on it, not being fearful of it, and maybe being that person yourself is a great way of elevating your position in resource management. Is just being really super knowledgeable about it.
Agreed. Matt, we have resource managers that are listening to this episode, and they're inspired by this. They're excited. They want to be the future resource management leaders of tomorrow. What do you have to say to them?
It's a really exciting career path you're on. I'd say become super knowledgeable about it and stick with it. Understand that it's a broad church, that you could move more into the technology side of it, the analytics side of it, or the business side of it. So play to your strengths and think about what direction you wish to go in, and maybe just be a little bit bold. Find out what you need to find out and tell people about it, shout about it, find an insight. You may be wrong, but we're all wrong occasionally. So put yourself out there and expose yourself to the wider organization and say, look, I'm really interested in exploring this, or I found this insight, and share it, because that's how organizations progress. I'm sure that in itself will help elevate the function.
I like that a lot. But Matt, I cannot let you go without going into our next segment, our Would You Rather, our Resource Revolution themed Would You Rather. So the way this is going to work, I'm going to ask you 3 questions. You'll have 2 choices. So Matt, you've not seen these questions before. You should be nervous. All right. So question number 1, would you rather personally field every customer support call for a week, or have to pitch Dayshape live on a reality TV show where the judges know nothing about resource management?
I would way rather do the first one.
Okay.
Because that's connecting me to our customers. I can get some good insight. I can feed that back into our business. 2 words, reality TV, that fills me with horror anyway. So I'd go for the first one.
Got it. Okay. Question number 2. Would you rather personally conduct a live demo of Dayshape at a major tech conference, but the Wi-Fi goes down, or have to explain resourcing to a room full of 5-year-olds while on camera?
Did these come to you in the middle of the night? I love it. The second one sounds a lot more fun, so I'll go with that. I can only imagine the questions that you'd get, so it would be great. Okay,
last question. Would you rather be forced to answer every tough investor question using only movie quotes, or deliver a keynote on the future of AI in resource management using only interpretive dance?
I would absolutely go for the former, because I think if you could weave in a few Top Gun quotes or something along those lines, it would be like a career highlight for me, and to try and do it as subtly as possible. So I pretty much try and do that on about a monthly basis anyway, Christine. So I would go for number 1. The second one would be horrendous. So I'll pass on that.
Love it. Well, Matt, it's been awesome talking with you. Thank you very much for sharing all of that with us. And with that, we'll wrap up our conversation. Thank you all for tuning in, and be sure to subscribe to hear more episodes.